Hello, hello, hello. Happy New Year. Happy Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the first month of the new year. I am so honored that you're here today, or if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for being here. If we haven't met yet, hello, I'm Darcy Eikenberg, and I work with leaders and teams all over the world to help manage their people challenges. And sometimes the biggest challenges they have are the challenges within themselves. So I'm glad you're here today. This is a little bit of an experiment, right? As I did my own work to think about how I want to show up in the world for the new year, I realized that one of the things that was really important to me was to connect more with the community, to connect with more people, to be able to remember that we're not virtual, we're real, right? We're here. I'm real, you're real. We just are communicating in different ways. We're communicating behind a screen instead of in the same room together. And so, with that, I wanted an opportunity to be able to talk to more of you, to be able to answer your questions, to be able to find ways to get more conversation going on about some of the sometimes more tricky things that are happening in our world of work. So I hope that if you're here with us today, that you will just take advantage of the opportunity to stop, take a breath, and be able to think about what is it that you need in our world of work? What are the things that would make it easier for you to work with the people you work with, to work with yourself in ways that not only work for your organization, but that also work for the way that you want to live and work in the world? So I'm so glad you're here. I'm honored that you're here and thank you. Please feel free to chime in the chat as you join and tell us where you are. And of course, if you have a question, I would love to tackle it. We've got questions that were submitted in advance by my insiders. If you're not yet an insider, um, feel free to put that in the chat. I'm flying solo today, so I'm not going to be adding links or doing things, but let me promise you this, that afterward, if you have a question, I mentioned a resource, you want to sign up to be an insider, put it in the chat and we'll make sure to get back to you afterwards. So, but my insiders are where I send every week um, a short little note of inspiration, of ideas, and hopefully a lot of times it's just a little bit of a chance for you to take that step back, to breathe, and to do something for yourself that not only helps in your work, but also hopefully helps in your life. So, great. We've got Kat from Mexico. We've got Tom from Pennsylvania. Thank you so much all for being here. So let's get started just with a little bit of conversation around something that I know has been on a lot of your minds. Before we get into some specific questions, I think this theme that I've been hearing from many different people, right? And here it goes something like this. How did it get to be the end of January already? I had all this energy for the new year. I'm like, 2023 was not a great year, or it was a great year and I want to continue, or it wasn't a great year and I need change. And then now, boom, a 12th of the year is almost gone. What's going on there? How do I keep from feeling like I'm not making any progress? Have any of you had that feeling? I know a lot of people that I talk to and work with are kind of having that end of January. I call it the icks, right? It's really scientific. I call it the icks. It is the blues. It is all my good energy just feels like it's fizzled. I don't feel like I'm making track on my goals, the things that I really thought I could do differently this year. What's the phrase? It's like, new year, old you, want want. Yeah, I get this too. This happens to All of us. I think this is part of a human condition when we get really caught up in that these markers, New Year's, birthdays, Mondays, are time that things have to start anew. There's actually a scientific term for this. It's called temporal landscapes, I think, or it's something about the point in time when it tricks our brain into thinking, well, we have a fresh start. So we can use that in a good way for us. That the fact is, we can actively choose to have a fresh start anytime. Yep, you don't need to wait for New Year's. You don't need to wait for the next birthday. You don't need to wait for Monday. You could choose that the thing that you want to work on, the thing you want to get back on track on, that your fresh start starts today. You could say, you know what? The way that things happen were how they had to happen. Time flies, as Kat said. Yeah, Craig's saying like running in quicksand. Absolutely. But you know what? If there's something I want, if there's something that I feel like needs to change, what's the small, tiny thing, right? What's the small, incremental thing that I want to try, that maybe I want to experiment with? I love the idea of experiments a lot of times for us when we're managing through change, especially when our changes sometimes interact with other people. Our changes, we can't always change everything on all by ourselves. What's the small experiment that we might be willing to take on? If we feel like we're running in quicksand, can we actually slow down for a little bit? Maybe take more deliberate steps on just one thing. Is there something that isn't working for you that if we said, maybe just for the next week, I'm going to change one thing about it? And one of the things that I like to talk about with my clients is that we only have control over three things. That's it. And here they are: what we think, what we say, and what we do. If you've been with me a while, you've, I'm sure, heard that. Or if you've read my book, Red Cape Rescue, you have read and seen other strategies around those three things. But I think sometimes this time of year, it is a great relief to realize I only control three things. So if I get to control what I'm thinking, like, could I experiment with a new thought about that thing? Like, hey, I really want to get stronger this year. I want to get healthier. Could I actually change my thought to, I want to do something today to help with that? As opposed to like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this at once. Or is there something that I could say differently? Maybe it's something I need to ask for. Maybe there's something I need to just shut up about, because every time that I chime in on it, I create more tension. I create more work for myself. I create something that I'm not liking the results of. Or maybe there's just something I need to do differently. Maybe I need to try one little thing, get up half an hour earlier, um, take my lunchtime and go for a walk instead of staying and eating at the computer and wiping off the crumbs afterward. So, for you, as we hit reset on this new year, and it's still a new year, you still have so much of the year, and honestly, way beyond the year left. So I'm so glad you're here. Yes, Kat says, you know, slowing down to go fast. I appreciate the comments. Thanks for those who have read the book. Really appreciate it. Always love your reviews and you being able to share the book with others. So let's go in now to some more questions. And again, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. If I miss it, because I'm managing solo, I have a commitment to you that I will go back and we'll catch it later. I also want to remind you that if you're an insider, if you're somebody who gets my regular emails, I always encourage you to hit reply and to send an email back to me with your questions, your comment, or just some other random thought. Because again, I'm not virtual. I'm real. I love to hear from you. And I work really hard to try to respond to each and every one because I know that behind that is a real human being. And I want to be able to be of help and service however I can to you. In the same way that you just being here, you watching us on the replay is so helpful and useful to me. I appreciate it. So, we had some questions that came in beforehand. So, let's go ahead and dive into the first one. So, this one I think is super interesting. So, I got the promotion I wanted and I'm drowning. Now, if you've ever had this happen, it's the thing you strived for and you got it, and then what did I do? What did I really want what I got? So for this person, and I won't read you the whole email that they sent, but I think you can understand the situation, right? Sometimes we really want that promotion or that opportunity or that new job, and then we get it. And then all these things come at us. And it speaks to all our fears of, are we going to be good enough? Are we going to be able to get this done? Are we actually going to live up to whoever tapped us on the shoulder, who believed in us for the promotion, for the new job, for the new opportunity? So for this person, somebody who got a promotion and then now is drowning, there's a couple of things. So one, the mistake that I see a lot of folks, especially as they are moving into higher and higher levels of their career. And I work with a lot of leaders who look really good on paper, but you talk to them behind the scenes, are really unsure about what they're doing. So I think there's one thing to remember, that the way the work looked before doesn't need to be the way it works now. So let me explain. Often, when we're stepping into a new job, we're stepping into a role, perhaps your boss has moved on, or someone left the company, and so it creates that hole. A lot of times, the easy route for us as human beings to do is to try and fill exactly what was there. It's kinda like having footprints in the sand, right? It's like, let me just put the footprints in the same places in the sand. But the reality is that you're a different person. You bring different skills. You bring different energy. What are the things that are unique to you that you can bring to this role? And I think it's also worth, talking about reset earlier, that anytime you're moving into a new role, and I actually suggest having this conversation before you go into the role, is to reset expectations. Because so often, I just had this conversation with a client this morning who's starting a new job, that we make assumptions about what the expectations are about success. We think that maybe the job is measured on one thing because that's what everybody puts out publicly. But honestly, what really is the measure of success for this job? Maybe it's actually doing something different than the person who was in it the last time. Maybe it's actually stretching the role, or maybe it's navigating it so it's smaller, so it's more manageable. But a lot of times when we're drowning, when we're stepping into a new opportunity, it's that we haven't set clear expectations and we haven't looked at ourselves to say, what are the things that are in my superpower space? The things that are at my best and highest use that I can bring to this opportunity. What are those things? Because we can right size the roles. Many of you have, if you've again been a reader or been in any of my onstage talks, you know that I believe that our work is all made up. Yeah, I said it. Work is all made up. I know it feels like there's a perfect process for everything. And I know we got some engineers on here too. And yes, there are things that have created processes and ways that we should do things and rules that we should follow. And at some point, somebody had to make all that up. So the world has changed so much, and our goals and our needs and where we're headed has changed. And even in our company, what might look the same on the outside isn't always the same anymore. And so we need to take that step back anytime we are making a transition, whether that's a new role, could just be a new year, and ask those bigger questions. Like, if we were making this up from scratch, what would this look like? If we were making an experiment, we are making a change to make it work better and work better for me, work better for the things that are my gifts that I bring to this opportunity, then how would we make something else up rather than what has been in existence already? So if you are in a new job, in a promotion, a new job, a new opportunity, and you are feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like you're drowning. I think first we'd go back to let's reset expectations. And that's something in your control, right? What do you say? What do you need to ask for? How do you need to take that step back and make the invisible visible? Because so often it's we have all these invisible expectations and maybe we need to put them on the table. We might also be assuming things for others about what they care about that's not true. So, what's true for you? How could this role work for you in a way that you're not drowning? What's in your control? What do you need to say no to? What do you need to reset expectations on? So I hope that's helpful. If some of you others in the chat have had similar experiences, please feel free to share. And of course, to use the chat as an opportunity to connect with somebody maybe that you didn't know already. If there's someone whose name shows up, feel free to network with them afterward. I think on LinkedIn, there is a tab where you can do some networking. And, I always say, I don't like the word networking. I'm not a tuna. I don't want to get caught in your net. But connecting with somebody is a great way to build a relationship, right? And we all need and want more good relationships that help us through whatever we're doing. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to whoever asked that question. Let's move on to another question. And I see a couple others in the chat, so please keep them coming. I will make sure that we get to that. So here's an interesting question, right? My team member keeps oversharing. Help. In this situation, and I will read you some of what this person shared. So I've had 7 messages from her this morning already, and it's only 10 a.m. It's basically her messages are basically letting me know that a colleague has made an error or that she hasn't heard from me on something else. So I had no need to be told about these things. It And the constant messaging is impacting me as it keeps distracting me. It keeps pulling me away from the things that are important. Your advice on this would be gratefully received. So, what do you do when somebody keeps messaging you? I mean, especially when you are a leader and it's your team, or maybe it's your colleagues, and you're constantly getting more information than you need. And maybe it's through text, maybe it's through instant message, your Slack channel, or any tool you're using in the organization, or maybe it's email even. But what happens when you're getting too much incoming? So I think the first thing that I share with this person is to recognize that there's something this person is trying to communicate that they're not communicating. I think it's a fear, right? Maybe you all had an experience like this. I think there is some fear that this person isn't either feeling seen, heard, or is feeling like I have to keep telling everybody what everybody else is doing because I don't trust that anybody actually sees what I'm doing. So, my recommendation, especially this is a leader in this situation, this is a leader to somebody who works for her, is to sit down, have a conversation. But the conversation isn't telling somebody what to do, because we all know how that goes. If we say, hey, you're doing this, don't do this, that doesn't change behavior. Yes, we can think that, oh, now we've been direct with them, but I think we have to do a job, especially if we're a leader, at not just saying the what, but figuring out a little bit more of the why. So here's a suggestion. You have to show somebody the behavior. You have to mirror back to them what the behavior is. So let's just call this person Steve. So, hey, Steve, I'm glad we have a chance to talk today. I've noticed that I'm getting a lot of messages from you on a pretty regular basis. Help me understand what's going on here. And help me understand is a phrase that you can use so often that keeps you from, as especially as a leader, anyone giving feedback, going directly to don't do this or try this or do this instead, of giving orders, as opposed to understanding why and the logic that someone is thinking that their behavior is a good idea anyway. And then here's the other trick: land the question and then shut up. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. It's okay to let someone else be uncomfortable with a question. And the truth is, this person may not recognize that they are oversharing. They may not recognize they're over messaging. They're probably not thinking about you. They're thinking there's something that they need there. There's something that they're looking for in telling you that this person missed this and I haven't heard back from this and this other thing happened. And their need for you to know is a signal for something. But you can't make it up for them and say, well, I just think you're feeling insecure, so chill out. Let them come to those conclusions and let them talk. And this is what silence does. And this is one of the tools for those of you who have teams. Many of you have worked with coaches like me. You recognize that silence can be one of the most powerful tools that we can practice in our real lives. Is one of the tools of a trained coach. Plant the question and shut up, shut up, shut up. Because when we are quiet, when we stop, what ends up happening is that the other person has to process. The other person has to be able to answer somehow. If you're stepping in, if you're like, well, I'm wondering if you're doing this because you think I don't know, or is there something you think I should know or that I'm not paying attention to, or maybe you don't trust me. If you're just going off, you don't let them process. Yeah, it's a great comment. Someone out there, most people are uncomfortable with silence. And when we stop talking, it's a great opportunity to gather more info. Oh, it also works great in interviews. Yes, great tip too. How do we get other people talking? And so when this person, let's say, we can't assume what this person is going to say, but we can create the conversation. And then as they are coming to the point of like, oh, I think this is the thing I'm supposed to do in my work because you're going to want to know. What you're going to do is you're going to uncover the assumptions that they are making about why they're doing what they're doing. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've run through this exercise with a lot of leaders, and they may not be the person you're talking to is probably not consciously aware of the why. because they're using either a built-in habit or a defense mechanism or what have you. But when you get them talking, they may uncover things at the same time. And so this is where the beauty of the silence, the beauty of asking a question, not about, not why did you think this was a good idea, but so help me understand that, you're sharing a lot. Why is that? And let them come to their conclusion, right? Let them come to their answers. And then you're going to surface an assumption, and then you can turn around and like hold that same assumption they have and say, "Oh, that's really interesting. You're what I hear you saying is," I love that line, use it, steal it. What I hear you saying is you're worried that Bob's not on track with his work. And so when you see that Bob's off track with his work, you are wanting to make sure that I know that. Thank you for that. And another language trick, and not but. And Bob and I are coordinating on his work. So I appreciate the interest. And that's what Bob and I are working on. So can we agree? And this is where you make your ask, right? If it feels appropriate to make your ask. So can we agree that when you and I are messaging, it's about X, Y, or Z, or the things we're checking in on are A, B, or C? But this goes back to resetting expectations. It goes back to understanding the why that some behind someone's behavior. And you can apply this to many more things than oversharing, right? Probably everybody has a situation where they can think of it. Craig tells us about a similar situation. Turns out they were afraid of getting fired. So they wanted to make sure their work was noticed. Yeah. Fear is a powerful motivator. Quite honestly, is not all bad behavior behind, like fear behind all bad behavior in some way, shape, or form. And, we don't think what we're doing is bad. We have an intention behind what we're doing. But the challenge and the joy of working with other human beings is that we don't always know how those things get interpreted. We don't always know where the response is coming from. We don't know how they're receiving what we're putting out there. So try those strategies instead of letting your frustration fuel up and then just telling them what to do. Like, stop doing that. That makes no sense. Take a beat, have a separate conversation, and be able to uncover their assumptions by seeing if you can understand where they're coming from. And it may be fear. It may be they're not feeling seen. It may be they're not feeling heard. Great. If that's not your belief, you can do something about that. You can do something about changing their perception. Okay, great. So terrific. So we are at the bottom of the hour. Just as a check-in, if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please make sure that you go out and connect with me. I want to make sure to include all of you in, all of our network and in future lives that we'll do like this, and make sure that people have an opportunity to ask other questions. So I saw a question come in from Tom. So Tom's question: I have a daughter who's about to graduate from college. What advice do you have? Oh, wow. Thank you, Tom, for the question. So first of all, congratulations to you and your daughter, right? Like, college is not a foregone conclusion anymore in our world. And we often have these milestone accomplishments that we don't stop and recognize where we started from. So I hope that the first advice that I would give for you and for your daughter is to stop and congratulate yourself, her for the achievement, you and your family for the support, the yeah, all the foundational things that help someone get through college and be able to start that next chapter of their life. I think that for advice, and I will caveat this with I don't have children. I've never gone through this. I have a lot of clients who have college age children and watch the progression and then even post college. I think the biggest theme that I hear new college grads struggling with is trying to figure it all out at once. And I blame some of our shortcut media for that, right? It's the what do you want to do with your life or figure out your career path and you're going to make a mistake like pick this, pick that. And the truth is, I think that for any college graduate, college isn't the end state. It really is a beginning state. I mean, if we're lucky, life is long. And we can accomplish so much more in over 10 years than we do in 1 year or 6 months. And so rather than worrying about what's perfect, what's right for me, I hope a new college graduate, and again, with the great support of their family and friends that it sounds like you're bringing to them for even asking the question, is like, just what's next? The next step doesn't have to be the perfect step. I don't know, anybody tell me your first job in the first post-college job if you had the opportunity to go to college. Uh, I worked as a receptionist part-time for, I don't know, probably almost a year while doing some other odd jobs, well, till while finding a full-time job. There's not a magic wand, but work in itself is worthy and good and an opportunity to learn. And I worry sometimes that we think everybody should have the perfect job out of college and the perfect job that, pays the salary that I want to make long term or the perfect situation with my boss or but it's not. But it's all learning. And I think another thing if as a new college grad that to recognize that not having the ideal situation right off isn't failing. It's part of the lesson. It's part of the journey. It's part of the narrowing down to understand who you are and what you really can do and what you care about. I think you have to work with some bad bosses to actually know what a really good boss is. I think you have to do some work that's outside of your superpower space to really zone in on where am I actually doing my best and highest work. So don't stay stuck in the swirl. And this is for anybody who is thinking about what's next. The swirl is a dangerous place to be. The swirl of stuckness, of like, well, I just have to figure it out first. No, the truth is that action doesn't come after confidence. Confidence comes after action. Let me say that again. We take action to build our confidence, but so many of us are waiting to feel confident before we take action. So dive in before it's ready. Know that you're not alone. Even a college grad, if you're out in a different city find the people, connect, but know that it's just the next step, not the final step. It's a long career out in front and it's all learning. So I hope that's helpful and thanks for the question. Uh, let's go to another one of the questions that was asked from our previous people. Okay, all right. Here's one that a lot of you may relate to. So I love working remotely, but I feel forgotten. Ooh, anybody have this happen? Anybody do, you don't have to tell me now if you're out here in public. But this actually, the timing is interesting because this morning I was reading the Wall Street Journal. Yes, I still read a physical newspaper. Um, and there's a big article, I don't think you can see it, um, that remote workers feel the brunt of layoffs. So this was interesting, the statistics here, and this was a survey of about 2 million white collar workers. But workers logging on from home 5 days a week were 35% more likely to be laid off in 2023 than their peers who put in office time. Now, remote work is the way of our world. I mean, just look at us being together here today, whether you're here live or you're watching in the replay. Like, we're always going to have an aspect of working from different locations, working not in physical proximity. By the way, I hate the term virtual, working virtual, because I'm not virtual. I'm real. You're real. But the truth is that human nature is that we have a proximity bias. When we see and hear people, when we see and hear things that are going on, we trust them sooner. We think of them more often. And so when we are working remotely and we are just staying within our lane, just doing our thing and not engaging with other people on our team, not having enough conversations, maybe not making it into the office once in a while if we are in a commuting distance to an office. Human nature is going to work against us. So I wish this wasn't the case, right? I think the research is super clear that the 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 productivity, as much as we can measure productivity in professional jobs, right? Am I being productive today? I don't know. You tell me. Um, but the research is clear that productivity doesn't really change uh, depending on what we're measuring, right? If we're measuring work by did we hit the results we wanted, may not matter if people are connected in person or not. But what the challenge that I think a lot of workplaces are going through right now, and a lot of leaders I talk to that are going through, is back to what really is work. And so for you, as somebody who loves working remotely, you're going to fight against the battle to some degree for a while of human nature is that the brain wants shortcuts, right? The brain is lazy. The brain wants to conserve energy. And people aren't coming out and seeking you. And especially if you are doing great work and you are like not making any ripples, you're making it look easy, which is fantastic. And that's wonderful. And it can be a path to getting forgotten, getting overlooked. So what can you do about it? Like, I recommend to a lot of my clients, let's stop complaining about, is this right? Is this right? Should we be in the office? Should we not? It's like your situation is your situation. Your leaders are going to have to come through and evolve and figure out what really is the work that we need to be done. And do we actually care where it gets done from? But you, as someone who loves working remotely, who there's advantages to however you define it, you have to decide if you're feeling forgotten, if you're feeling passed over, if you're feeling like, hey, I'm going to be part of this, 35% more, have a more tendency to be in layoffs because it's a whole lot easier to let go of people I don't see and interact with than people I have to face on a regular basis. That's just human nature. But what can you do? So this is where you've got to take control. You can create conversations. You can put regular check-ins on other people's calendars, in the invitation. And it's not just randomly doing it, but truly recognize who are the people that you care the most to stay visible with. I find the phrase visibility equals viability to be very powerful and very true. And think about it in your own life, right? I think a lot of us, we think, well, I'm not biased, or I'm not just going to judge somebody's work just because I've seen them. But think about the last change you made in a vendor, a dry cleaner, a restaurant, a plumber. If they didn't come across your path somehow, maybe word of mouth or a neighbor or, you know, some kind of stimulus, you're never going to find them and see them. You're not seeking them out. Even if you're like, I need a new plumber, and you're asking your friends in the neighborhood, it's still somebody else referring it. It's still another person connecting. So if we want to be that person, and I think this goes for in when we're working in businesses where we're an employee, as well as those of you who might be entrepreneurs. Like, if we stay hidden and wait for people to find us, they're not going to. But we have to go out and connect with the people we care about. And this isn't a, hey, look at me, I'm so special, let me show off. I want to offer you a different mindset. It's recognizing that somebody out there needs you. Somebody needs you to check in, to show up, to ask for some time. And yes, your needs can get met by that too. But when you are looking to serve first, when you're looking to, hey, uh, Tom, you are involved in so many interesting things. And, I would just love to catch up for 15 minutes and hear, what you're seeing, how this project that you're working on is going. Or the thing we were talking about in the chat on that Zoom call, I'd like to just go a little bit deeper and ask you some other questions. Where is it that you can serve, not sell, where you can show up? Somebody might need you, and maybe it just needs you in the sense of another person at the company to connect with. Somebody who's curious about them. I mean, most of us, our favorite topic is ourselves. So if someone reaches out, like, I would love to hear more about the work you're doing on X. Could we schedule a 15-minute call? Doesn't have to be Zoom, doesn't have to be anything. Could just be a hello, voice to voice. But relationships are the key to not feeling forgotten. But even in your best relationship, some of you may have even a friend, right? Where, we drop off. How do we stay visible to stay viable? That's not ego. That's not, being braggadocious. That's actually being useful. So for those of you who love working remotely, but you feel forgotten, uh, take the responsibility, reach out, take control. There's also an article that I have on the blog at redcaperevolution.com that goes into more strategies. And so when we go back, we'll post this in the chat. And anybody who this is your question, or maybe you know or love somebody who is struggling with this, that you'll have some more resources to be able to use for them. Okay. All right. So we've got just a little bit of time left. Thanks for the comments. And so let's have one last question here before we wrap up. Oh, this one comes up a lot, right? And I think this was a theme for many people in 2023. Some people was a crappy year. Some people it was a great year, but this is a theme that can happen. So I do great work, and now I have too much of it. It's kind of parallel to the question we started with, right? Around, I just got a promotion and now I'm overwhelmed. Well, doing great work is an easy way to beget more invitations to do great work. Which is why I'm super passionate about knowing your boundaries and knowing what is your best and highest use. What is the work that's in your superpower space? And if you're not sure of that, that is a great place to work with a professional coach, to work on getting clear, to work on being able to know what you need to think, say, and do so that you are staying in that lane where you can contribute at your best and highest use. But when we do great work, very often then other people see it and then they want you to be involved in the other great work. So one of the key things for this is, how do you learn how to say no? And I think it's flip and easy, and I have done this myself sometimes, is to say no is a complete sentence. But we all know we live in the real world with other human beings where no is not the end of a conversation, right? There are only few people probably in your life where if someone asks something, you could just say no, or even no, thank you. Right? In our workplaces, if someone approaches you, or more likely it's going to be email, right? With a, hey, here's this thing, and we want you to do the thing that you did on so great on whatever. We want you to do it to this thing here. We're having a meeting next week. Let's get started. So I think you have to remember that you have to decide for yourself, what does a good opportunity for me look like? And where can I bring my best and highest use to the organization? So even if you think somebody has decided, my boss has decided, the leadership team has decided, I will do this, where do you need to scope the boundaries? Where do you need to not just take the order and then, oh my gosh, now I've got too much of it. So that great work that I was able to do, I have now diminished my ability to do great work, because great work takes time, takes focus. We're not a computer, right? We can't just like pop add another chip and be able to expand our capacity. But we sometimes think we can. Especially I find, my clients, like you all watching this and chiming in, you're all smart people. Smart people overthink what they can do. So, how do we recognize when we have these feelings of I've got too much of it, I'm overwhelmed, my quality is starting to dip, I'm I'm exhausted. All these things, the signs to say, where do I need to rescope this? Where do I need to actually take the thing that I was invited into, which I might be excited about, but to right size it? And so this goes to having tough conversations. It may be being honest with, I am so excited at the opportunity to work on this project. And one of my favorite words, I've mentioned this before, and here's the capacity that I have. Or, and I think the best way that I can contribute is that it looks like this, not this. I think another strategy here that I'll offer to many of you is, sometimes for smart people, we try to solve too much. We can see the vision of how that work could get done. But by trying to solve it all, it ends up coming back to us. So if you are kind of getting inundated with good opportunities, and you know that maybe there's 10% in that opportunity that really is yours, that's yours at your best and highest use. But what about the other 90%? That, watch how you are talking about it. You might not want to say, well, I do this and I do that. Excuse me. Maybe, well, the place I could add the most value is in working with the client on this and putting this together, and then. And at that point, it would need to be handed over to a team to do A, B, and C. And solve for that problem. Lead the conversation around, how would we make that work? Because here's another thing to think about when someone comes to you in your superpower space. They're like, you're the expert on this. I have a client who just completed this awesome, complex technical people integration for a major bank's contact center, right? So it's not just a contact center, right? It's not just a phone bank. It's all the technology and the service and the recruiting and the retention. Super complex. And to some people, it looks like, well, it was just getting a new call center up and running. But that's not what it was. So you have to be able to help people when they're coming to you with great work. First of all, define like what's the great work that you do? It may not look like that last project you did. What's the piece of it? So in her case, the piece was the creating connections and collaborations across the organization. It wasn't about picking the right technology or changing how we hire, but the collaborations allowed other people to do their best work. So for you, if you are getting too much of your great work and now you're overwhelmed, you've got too much, and you're afraid, this person didn't say this overtly, but maybe you're afraid to say no. Recognize it might be the biggest favor that you're doing the asker is to right size it for what's right for you, and then to map out what it's going to mean and need from the company for the rest of the work to happen. So with that, we've gone through 4 different questions, 5 actually. We had another question from the audience. I just want to thank you for being here, for connecting with each other. Uh, you know, asking me anything is probably not the right name for this, but it is the fact that everything having to do in our workplaces is all around people we work with, how we interact with them, and more importantly, the most important person in our work, that is ourselves. So I hope that as this month ends and as we get ready to hit reset for a fabulous February, is that you take a minute and do something for you. Try an experiment if you're overwhelmed. Try letting something go or renegotiating the expectations. Um, Try cutting yourself some slack, take a break, be able to let go of something that you thought would be done by the end of January. You thought you'd already be in motion, and you know what? There's still time. In the end, remember that somebody out there needs you. They need what you bring, they need what you do, they need who you are and who you are at your very best. If at any point in your journey I can be of support to you, please come out to redcaperevolution.com. We have actually a whole vault of free tools there. You are always welcome to share. It's redcaperevolution.com/free-tools. And as well as my awesome insiders community. Thank you if you're already part of our insiders. If you're not, redcaperevolution.com/insiders, I think is where you can get it. If not, always can message me here on LinkedIn or anywhere, and I'm happy to share more information with you. For now, we'll wrap up, say goodbye, and we'll see you here again in February. Thanks all for being here. Have a great day. Appreciate it.